it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 22 of my 2021 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Mama Elephant's Hot Cocoa stamp set. So I've stamped that out in Lawn Fawn jet black ink with some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock. I'm also going to be using some pattern paper from the Simple Stories Feelin' Frosty 6x8 pad. So I'm just going to tear off a sheet that I'm going to be using for an inspiration and tuck that under my cardstock panel so I can pull my color palette from that. I'm coloring with my Copic markers today, and I'm starting with the black parts of my penguin. For that, I'm using T3, T5, and T7. So there's the little sides of his body, and then he also has his two little flippers that are resting on the top edge of the mug. So I'm just going to color those with the T7 first, and then blending out with the T5 for my midtone and the T3 for the highlight. And then I also wanted to tie in some of those grays in other places since the pattern paper has so much black in it. So I'm going to do a dark silver spoon. I took away the T7 and added in the T1. So I'm using that T5 for the darkest and then blending out with the T3. And then I saved a little sliver of space on that handle of the spoon, and then also for the bottom part a little bit of a wider space for that T1. And then I'm also going to use these shades to color in the rim of the little tea bag, or not the tea bag but the label of the tea bag, just to tie that in another place because we have so much of that dark color and there really wasn't many other places to be able to use it. Then I'm going to take this combo down a step by taking away the T5 and adding in the T0. I used just a touch of that T3 right under the hat brim on that penguin, and then I'm blending that out with the T1. I also used the T1 for the rest of the shadows, and then I'm blending that out with the T0 and leaving some white space in the center of his face, so that'll be nice and highlighted. And then I'm also going to use just the T1 and the T0 for the white parts of the hamster, and then leave some white cardstock there as well. I use YR04 to color in the penguin's beak, and then I'm going to start coloring in the mug that the penguin is sitting, and I'll use RV00, RV10, and RV11, trying to pull in that lighter pink flower that is in that pattern paper. There's also some little berries in that pink shade. So I'm going to add that RV11 on either side so I can have a nice shine in the middle to make it look round. And I'm also going to put some shadow under all of those drips because those are pretty thick on there, and so they would cast a shadow on that mug. And then I'm going to blend that out with the RV10, just pulling that color out a bit. It is quite a big step down to that RV00. So I want to make sure that I'm working over the edge of the previous shade and making a nice transition. But I will do a second layer on this as well, just to smooth everything out and make things a little more saturated and dynamic. So I am going to leave that in the video today so you can see how that looks. So I'm just going right back to that RV11, going right over the areas that I've already laid that in, but it's just going to make them a little bit darker, just reinforce that dark color, which is going to, make those highlights look really prominent as well. So I blended that out with the RV10, and then I realized that I forgot to do the rim of that mug. So I went back to the RV11 and RV10 to fill in that because there wouldn't be too much highlight. The highlight would really be where those drips were. And then I wanted to tie that color in somewhere else. So I'm going to do the little Santa hat that the hamster is wearing. I just used the lighter two shades on that because there wasn't much room for a third. And then I decided to do the reindeer's nose with the RV11 as well. And I also colored in the little heart on the tea bag label with those darker 2 shades. Next, I want to pull in that cornflower blue shade from that pattern paper. The combo that I'm using is going to be a little bit darker than that, but this is as close as I can get with the Copics that I have. So I'm using B41, B52, and B45. So the B52 is going to be my mid-tone, and I'm going to do the Santa hat that the penguin is wearing with those shades. Then I'm going to jump over and do the mug that the hamster is sitting in, or actually he looks like he might be on the outside of his, because it looks like that rim is in front of him. So I'm going to start with that B45 and bring that in from the sides, and then I'm making sure to go over the edge of that B45 with the B52 and just soften that up and pull that color toward the center. And then I'm doing the same thing with my highlight, which is the B41. And especially on these larger images, I always like to do that second layer because it just doesn't look smooth. And this is supposed to be a smooth ceramic mug. And so I really want that blend to be just really seamless and not have any of those little harsh lines or those feathery edges kind of showing. So I'm doing that second layer, which really helps with that smoothness and saturation, especially once that dries down. And then I'm going to color in the handle with those shades as well, just putting a highlight on the top edge of that. I'll do the background of that little tag, and then I realized that I forgot to do the rim of the coffee mug, so I'm going to go back to do that and add that B45 toward the back edge, and then a little bit on the front edges. I mean, it's circular, so there's not really edges, but I just want to keep that highlight where the light would be hitting it the most. So I just did that, and then I'm going to make a softer blue blend by using B00 with that B41 to do some of the white objects. I started with just the B00 and then quickly realized that that was not going to be dark enough. So I am going to go and add that B41 in first and then blend that out. And I'm going to do that for the whites on both of the little Santa hats and also the white stripes on that little candy cane. I'm not sure if it's a candy cane or a straw, but either way I'm going to color it in candy cane colors. I'm also going to use this for the white parts of the little other objects like the marshmallows and the little dollop of marshmallow or whipped cream that is on top of the reindeer's head. You know, normally I would use like Pale Ease or something like that, but I just wanted to stick to this color palette, so I'm just working with the colors that are in that, and I really like how that makes you think outside the box and choose colors that you typically wouldn't reach for. So I think it's always nice to kind of limit your color palette that way. Then I'm moving on to a hot pink combo, which I'm pulling from that pattern paper once again. I chose RV04, RV06, and RV09 because I felt that was the closest match. So I'm going to color in the other stripes of that candy cane or straw, whichever it is. And I'm also going to use that shade to color in my strawberries. So anything that I would normally want to be red, I'm going to use the hot pink for instead. So I added a little of that RV09 down at the bottom edges for some shadow. And then I'm blending up with the RV06 as the mid-tone. And then I'll use RV04 to fill in the highlighted area. And I will also color in the mug that the reindeer is sitting in these shades. So I'm going to come in from either side with that RV09 and lay in some shadow. and just pull that color down in a feathering motion toward the center. And then again with that mid-tone, just going right over the edge of the previous shade. These colors I really do have to work quite a bit at because the RV06 and the RV09 are still pretty far apart. And then the RV06 and the RV04 are a little bit closer, but I still definitely need that second layer. You can see that things are just not smooth in the center there, and that is totally fine. Copics are meant to be layered. If you're using a good quality cardstock that is intended for alcohol ink coloring, then there should be no problems here. So just going over that another time, and then I'm going to let that dry back and smooth out while I work on the rim. This one is pretty narrow, so I'm just coloring that in carefully, and then I'll bring that lightest shade across the front like I did with the rest, and then of course color in that handle, bringing up that darkest shade from the bottom so that I get a nice highlight at that top edge of the handle. Next, I'm going to work on those chocolate drips in the first mug, and I chose E44, E47, and E49. I think this color looks like a nice dark chocolate or like a really thick hot fudge, and that's kind of the look that I'm going for. So I'm starting with that E49 and just laying in a little bit of shadow, not getting too heavy-handed on those drips because there's not a lot of room there to work with, and I want to make sure that it doesn't just look like a black blob or a really dark brown blob. So I blended that out with the E47, but still made sure to leave some room for that E44 for that highlight, because that's going to add a lot of depth there. And then I'll use those shades to do the reindeer's antlers as well, just being real sparing with that E49 once again because there's not a ton of room there, and then blending out with the E47 and then filling in with that E44. And then I wanted to do kind of tie things together just like I did with the grays. So I'm going to do like a step down combo by taking away the E49 and adding in the E43, and I'm going to do the drink that is in this little reindeer's mug. It's going to end up being tea because I'm going to add that tea bag to that mug later on. So I just added a bit of depth with the E47. I'm blending out with the E44 and then filling in with the E43 so it just looks a little bit softer there, making sure that my blend is really nice. And then I'm going to transition one more down by taking away the E47 and adding in the E42. And we'll do the cocoa that is in the hamster's mug. So this one is more of like a regular cocoa. It'll be a little bit softer. And using that E44 as the darkest and blending out with the E43. And then filling in with the E42 for a nice highlight. Then I'm going to switch up my browns to something a little bit richer. For the reindeer's fur, I'm choosing E33, E35, and E37. Doing some shading with that E37 first, right up under that whipped cream, and then down the right-hand side of his face since he's facing more toward the left. And then I'm going to blend out with the E35. And also do his little feet that are kind of sticking up out of the tea. And then I'll use the E33, and I even decided to add in one shade lighter because I felt like his face was just a little bit dark. So I pulled in E31, so he has 4 shades on him. And then for the hamster, I'm going to skip the E37 and start with the E35 as my darkest. So he'll still match, but look unique himself, you know, not the same exact shades, but just very much in the same tone. So I blended out the E35 with the E33, and then I'm filling in with the E31 for his highlight. And then I wanted to give my critters some rosy cheeks, so I went back to my RV10 and RV11, did a little oval with the RV11 first, and then blended that out with the RV10. That makes it nice and soft and just spreads that color out. And then all that's left was the little stem and leaves of the strawberries, and I wanted to pull in that darker teal, so I went with BG18 and BG78, just those two shades since it's such a small little area there. And then I grabbed my black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and got that started and went over the eyes of my critters to make them nice and bright and shiny again, just to bring them back to life a bit. And the last eye on the penguin got a little bit out of control there, so I let that dry, and then I grabbed my little pokey tool and just scraped away the ink that I didn't like, and then I trimmed these images out with their matching dies. So I've trimmed down that inspiration pattern paper, and then I'm taking one of the dies from the Mama Elephant Slim Card Basics and just taping that down in place. And then I'm going to grab the 3 little windows and figure out how I want those to go. They're each a little bit unique. They're not identical, so I just wanted to make sure that I had, I put the 2 larger ones on the outside edges and the slightly smaller one in the center. So I'm just trying to make sure that I have those spaced correctly, and then I'm holding those in place with a little bit of post-it tape so that I can run this through my die cutting machine and nothing is going to shift. So then I will do that and then pop out all of those little windows and remove the post-it tape. I can save those 3 little windows in case I want to use them for a different card, but for today's card I wanted to have a different color pattern paper going behind it. So I'm just going to pop those dies off, and then I'm going to go back to that pattern paper pad, the Simple Stories Feelin' Frosty, and I'm going to flip through and hold that frame up so I can kind of figure out what would look good behind it. I thought about this stripe print, that would have looked nice. There was this pink polka dot print that was nice and pale, so that would work. There was also a plaid, but I felt like that would be too busy. Ultimately, I did decide on this pink polka dot print, so I'm going to trim that down as well. I also chose just a tiny sliver from a previous card, the reverse confetti card with the Polar Play stamp set. Just a little bit of that kind of cornflower blue, and I'm stamping You Warm My Heart and Soul on that with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. So that's going to be my sentiment for this card. And then once I have that stamped out nice and clear, I'll pop my card base in my MISTI. I have scored and folded a piece of Lawn Fawn Ballet Slippers cardstock to be 7 by 8.5. And then I scored it at the 3.5 inch mark. So the whole card will be 3.5 by 8.5. And then I'm taking the other image from this stamp set and one of the other sentiments. It says, sending you warm hugs in a mug. And I'm going to stamp that down a couple of times until I have a nice impression. So there's nothing Christmassy about this one necessarily other than the pattern paper. So it could definitely be just a winter card for someone who doesn't celebrate Christmas, or, you know, if you've already sent out all your Christmas cards and you just want some winter cards to send out, you know, after the holidays, this would be a great one. I've trimmed down a piece of Lawn Fawn Moonstone cardstock with the scallop border from that Mama Elephant Slim Card Basics, and I just had to get my glue going. That super fine nozzle sometimes will get stuck if you get it clogged, so just had to get past that, and then I can glue that down on my card front, and then I'm going to add this little pattern paper frame right over top. Make sure that that is on there nice and straight and press that down into place. And then I'll grab my images, and I've added some foam tape to the back of all of the little mugs with the critters in them. So on the far left, I'm going to adhere that sweet little penguin, and then I'm going to do the reindeer, which is also in a pink mug, on the far right. And then I'll have the little hamster in his blue mug in the center, so that kind of breaks up the two pinks. So I'll just adhere him down. I'm going to do him more in the center of his window, while the other two I did shifted a little bit more to the left and right. And then I wanted to add these little accessory images there, but they just needed a little bit of foam tape to support them. So I'm going to add a tiny little piece there between the frame and the bottom of the mug handle. And then I'll add some liquid glue so that I can put some marshmallows right in front of that. And then I'm going to do the other marshmallows for the little reindeer. And it's the same exact image, I just flipped the way that I colored it and the way that I'm positioning it to make it look like a different arrangement of marshmallows. And then those strawberries are going to go in front of the little blue mug that the hamster is in, because I thought that that hot pink would contrast nicely against that. So I just added a little bit of foam tape once again, and then adhered those down into place. And then all that's left is this little tea bag label, which I'm going to add to the reindeer's mug. I trimmed down the sentiment with one of the speech bubble dies in that Slim Card Basic set, and I'm going to pop that up between the first and second windows. And then I wanted to add a few sparkling clear sequins, so I took some time to figure out where I wanted those to go, and now I'm using my Studio Katia embellishment wand to just pick those up and set them down into place in that glue and make sure that they are adhered nicely. I did use a few bigger ones, but I kind of tucked them behind the mugs or the images just to kind of hide a little bit of them so they didn't look too large. But I thought they kind of went with that polka dot pattern paper in the background. It just had those nice big dots there with the sequins. So I'll get that last one on there, and then I'm going to let them dry for a few minutes, and then I decided to fill in the centers with a couple colors of stickles. I have some broken china and some dusty concord. These two are pretty old, so the stickles inside had gotten kind of thick, so I just had to kind of dab it down and then swirl it around to kind of break the connection of the stickles. And I had a little bit of trouble getting it out a few of the times, but eventually I got it down enough there to cover what I was going for. I just wanted to cover the center hole of those sequins just to add a little extra sparkle and just make it look a little bit more complete. And then I did the same with the dusty concord, so I just did 3 of each of those. And then for the third shade, I used pink taffeta, which came out a lot nicer, so that one was a lot easier to work with. I also wanted to add a little bit of Stardust stickles, so I'm just putting some on the little marshmallows and the whites of the Santa hats for everybody. And then for the reindeer, I'm also going to do it on the little dollop of whipped cream and on the heart on the label for the tea bag. And then I will pick that up to the camera so you can see all of that sparkle and shine. And I'll give you another peek at the inside as well. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button. If you've been enjoying this series so far, hit that like button. It really lets me know that I'm doing a good job, and it really gives me a lot of encouragement. Subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. If you're interested in any of these products, I'll have them listed and linked for you in the description bar to take you right to them. And if you'd like to keep watching, here's 2 videos from previous years of holiday card series I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.